Changing my voice. This is part two. Part one was about the devil. And let's just add a little to that and we'll get into the first beast here. So in Revelation chapter 12, it says that there was a sign and it was an enormous red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns on its heads. Right? So the 7 heads stand for the spirit of ideas that lead the spirit, that direct the spirit. They're like generals of hell, kings, right? The mountains they worship on, a point of a pinnacle of something, theft, murder. Okay, these are anti-Christ, anti-martial art principles, right? Wickedness, greed, lust, right? So there's 7 deadly sins, what have you. That's why they're called heads, right? They're leading this collection, this spirit of the devil. So the essence of darkness, right? The dominant characteristic of the spirit of darkness is the devil, okay? And he's said to have 10 horns or 10 strengths and 7 heads, right? 7 leaders, 7 kings, and oftentimes I point to Dagon, Baal, Nebo, Molech, Chemosh, Rephan, and so on and so forth. These demons in the Bible that are said to be some of the main false idols, right? There's all kinds of false idols, but some of them really embody idolatry, right? They embody the sciences and certain ideas that Satanists rely on to do their dirty deeds. For example, if we were talking about America, right? There's clandestine operations, psychological operations, there's chemists, right? There's psychologists, okay? There's people who oversee criminal rings and human trafficking as part of their deep state, part of their CIA activities, what have you, black ops, dark ops, psyops. And so you have these kind of guys working together to create the essence of evil. So let's talk about the first beast. So when the dragon was enraged from not being able to get the woman who symbolizes Jerusalem with God, and the child Christ, he stood by the shore of the sea in chapter 13. Okay, so the dragon is angry. He's failed to outmaneuver God and Jerusalem in heaven and what it gives birth to spiritually speaking. We say in Galatians 4, right? More are the children of Jerusalem in the sky, who symbolizes Sarah, that correlates to Sarah, at least according to Paul. Okay, and Jerusalem in this world correlates to Hagar. So Jerusalem in this world kind of bears the fruit of evil, persecuting the righteous, or the spirit that drives Jerusalem in this world in the physical realm. And the idea of Jerusalem in the sky, which is separate from the Jewish people, we'll get into that. Okay, the idea that Jerusalem is superimposed on, right, the ideal city in heaven. What you think of is not what Jerusalem in the heavens is. It's a martial city. The Lord is a warrior. Right, the Lord is his name. It doesn't say the Lord is a craftsman or scientist or priest or rabbi. Okay, so the devil fails to outmaneuver God in principle and in spirit, and he's pissed off. And then the first beast emerges. Okay, it emerges from the sea. As the devil is standing by the shore of the sea, which symbolizes the peoples, the nations, the multitudes, the languages. It symbolizes the muddied water of Satan, giving birth in water. There's a lot of connections there. And so this beast has 10 horns again, 7 heads with crowns on its head, and each with a blasphemous name. Again, the name is like the spirit, right? For example, when we're talking about God, not the devil, it says the Lord is the warrior, the Lord is his name, right? Faithful and true. Also God's name, right? Righteous and just, a holy God, a righteous God. So there's blasphemous names that are mocking God, and there's blasphemous principles and leaders of those principles. So the horns represent pitiful, evil, and usually gayest strengths and the kings of what it is talented at. What its spirit collectively is talented at, and that means, there's various points in the spirits. It's the 7-fold spirit of Satan. For example, if somebody was doing martial arts in God's spirit, there'd be a certain wisdom in his blows, right? In his strikes, you'd have wisdom, you'd have justice, you'd have hearts, you'd have true love, etc., etc. So these are characteristics of the same spirit, but then these are components, right? Points of references. Okay, so it is with the collection of spirits that is the beast, or the 7-fold spirit of the first beast. Okay, All right. Okay, so basically it's important to note, and again, I forgot to say this at the beginning, this video is not about racism or something. I'm just going to say things and use races as an example because they're significant, right? The world is not run by blacks and Native Americans, right? It's run by whites, Jews, and LGBT people, so I have to say that as such in order to help you understand who's doing what and who embodies what spirit the most and what faction of what people and how that relates to their collection of people as people break down in terms of races for the most part and so on and so forth. So with that being said, okay, the gays, the whites, and the Jews, and the churches, and everyone else has this wrong. The beast ambushes people from different angles, which is what the leopard stands for. The feet of a bear symbolizes fools bent on folly, causing people to flee to them when they are too cowardly to obey God to me. So we see in Proverbs it says, better to meet a bear robbed of her cubs than a fool bent on folly. And we see the pattern of teaching in the Bible shows us that when it says things like that and later on people refer to things like that, or the story refers to the bear, for example, that is connecting to that particular verse and every other verse with a bear in it, and they want you to think about what these things mean relative to that point of reference. So the beast is like a leopard, it's like a bear, etc. It's like a lion because it refers to those ideas in the story, and you have to use the appropriate application of it. So the beast is the spirit of people who are is the spirit of fools, right? And it attracts fools by getting them to take a foolish path, to go on a foolish course. For example, the government tells people in the community and people who come from outside the community to gang stalk me. And so out of fear, they're afraid of the government, so they persecute me. And therefore they're seeking refuge in the beast. Okay? So it says the day of the Lord is like someone ran away from a lion only to run into a bear. Okay? So these are fools bent on folly who are running away from some danger and seeking refuge in another danger. And they're devoured by that danger. They're attacked by that danger. They're chewed up for eternity. They're cooked by that danger. Now, a leopard ambushes in a certain way, right? A leopard could be in a tree, could be in the bushes, could just run after you. A leopard hunts prey in a certain way that makes it the master hunter on the ground. So the reason why the leopard is being used has to do with the angles that it works, and also has yellow and black spots. So it symbolizes that people are being attacked by God and the devil for being evil. The devil does not help people. He leads them astray, makes them think they're doing something, makes a fool of themselves. He makes it so they make a fool of themselves, and he devours them. So I'm making it harder for me to talk, so let me just wrap this up here. Okay. The beast is part of the world, and it is angry that the offspring of people will no longer have souls, so it is compared to a bear robbed of its cubs in Proverbs. Okay, so, their offspring are the body without the spirit is dead, like faith without works is dead. So the beast is like a product of the world in a sense, right? That God created for a purpose. And the world collectively, the world is angry that even though it brought forth these trees and these plants and these various things for people to eat, etc., that people chose the devil. So the world is like getting even. The world is getting even for the evil that is being done on it. And so the beast is like a manifestation of the world trying to get even. But it's also a manifestation of God's wrath. Okay, what God allows to punish people. And make no mistake, the beast is evil. One of his heads appears to have a fatal wound that is supposedly healed, and it represents the Jewish people thinking that they are healed, and Isaiah 1 gives this away. They are described as children given to corruption who are always being spiritually beaten by the Lord. Their rebellion, okay, meaning them cheating me out of my right to lead, is why. Like the rest of the world that is following whites, Jews, and LGBT people, they have become like Sodom and Gomorrah, dark-spirited, fairy and white kind of rainbow-like spirits, and pink spirits on a spectrum, right? So some are more kind of like the military generals, more spirit of darkness. Some are more fairy-like, what have you. So it's on a spectrum, kind of mix and match, what have you. As people are said to be brute-like and nerd-like and cowardly, okay, they don't understand why to obey God through me. So they ask, who can wage war against it? So specifically, that's a very key part there. It says, who can wage war against the beast? It says, who is like the beast? Who can wage war against it? They don't understand that victory is in principle. They don't understand the true nature of warfare and how if you're not in the spirit of God, you're not winning, and so on and so forth. So it utters blasphemy for 42 months, right? 4 plus 2 equals 6, and this is a mark of the beast connection. It explains how people need to obey God through the appropriate, in the appropriate way to defeat the beast, right? So it's explaining, hey, the problem is that they don't understand that you need to obey God through me to defeat the beast. So they're saying, who can wage war against it, right? They don't understand it enough to obey God through me. Like Martin Luther King said, there's a difference between knowing and understanding. A lot of people know you, but few people understand you. So a lot of people know that they're supposed to obey God through me, but they don't truly understand, or else they would. As they say, seeing is believing. Okay? So we see that mark of the beast, right? It utters blasphemies for 42 months. It's said to defeat people who otherwise would have been holy people, right? They're being defeated. The best interpretation of that is they're actually fallen out of grace. I used to interpret it different than that, and there's a way to interpret it differently than that, okay? But the best interpretation is they're falling out of grace because they're not obeying God through me. That's why it's saying who can wage war against it, and it's being allowed to defeat these people because these people did not finish their works, right? We said in the beginning of Revelation, the first couple chapters, so like chapter 2 through 3 or so, where it says that the churches are falling out of favor with God because they're not finishing their deeds and things of that nature. And so it is with the holy people who were otherwise finished off their acts and made it, they would have finished doing what they needed to do to get to heaven. So they're making it so I stumble on my words because I'm right here. There's a bunch of racist white Jews, LGBT people. They're very jealous. They throw fits like, they're very much like European quote-unquote royals in popular culture, like in the Shaka Zulu BBC series, right? They're throwing some arrogant, rich snob fit. It's pretty pathetic, but that's what's going on here. A lot of them are nerds, military psychopaths, Freemasons, just weirdos like that. Okay, so all right, so the people who wrote Revelation, keep in mind they're evil, so that's why they're writing it in code. That's kind of missed by a lot of people, right? The Bible, Torah, Harat. I made a video where I talk about this stuff and all the wordplay in the words like the Kabbalah, the Zohar, okay, and so on and so forth. So we see that the people who accept the mark of the beast are permanently marked as yoked to LGBT people, child molesters, right, other sinners, what have you. Okay, while my top martial arts victory reigns forever and ever. My wisdom reigns forever and ever. God obviously reigns forever and ever, but I reign at his right hand forever and ever. My martial art principles, okay, my justice, my righteousness, my wisdom, all of it's from God, and at God's right hand as his most loyal, as his greatest work ever among human beings, I reign forever and ever. So I'm going over time. Let me just go through the second beast really quickly here. So the second beast comes out of the earth and again, this goes back to the manifestations of the earth, right? The water is found on the earth itself is the earth, right? So these beasts are manifestations of the earth being angry, right? So God made the earth like he made Jerusalem and Israel and Zion to be receptive to God. And they have like spirits of their own, right? That's why there's a Jerusalem in the sky in heaven, Galatians 4. Okay, so the earth is angry at the inhabitants of the earth for betraying God, just like Jerusalem in this world is angry at the inhabitants of the earth. And that includes, the Jews. And so there's all these punishments are being directed at them. And we see that in Revelation 20 where people are striking each other. When we connect that to Ezekiel, right, the fire coming down from the heavens is the fire of hating God and hating each other, because when people rebel against God, it's a form of hating God, and their spirits are attacking themselves and each other, because they're what's left of God's creation. There's just enough left there for the devil to keep hating the people on this planet until they go extinct, what have you. So the second beast comes out of the earth and is a false prophet. It is a spirit. Keep in mind, it is a spirit, right? Not a person. It's a collection of spirits. Okay, so when you talk about this false prophet, it's not one person. It's a bunch of people channeling that spirit. It's a bunch of people who are in that spirit. It's the spirit of a bunch of people who are in that spirit, if you get what I'm saying. Okay. So the people who worship the flesh and the spiritual image of the first beast, okay, have accepted the mark of the beast. Now it's also the second beast in a sense, but you get what I'm saying. So it's the flesh and the spiritual image. However, because there's technology to change your flesh, okay, and they're using it on me, you got to look at it in terms of people obeying God through me. For example, you could still tell it's me. You could still tell that I'm the image of God, but they've changed, my features a little bit with making me hungry. Like when people get hungry, their face gets like sucked up, right? So they did things to mess up my nutrition, which changed the way my face, right? They did things with technology to slightly change my teeth and how and it affected the overall look of my face. But you could still tell that I'm a righteous person. If you were to hear me explain that to you face to face, you would know that that's what's happened. You'd have no doubt in your mind. However, because people walk by, they might not know that. Therefore, I have to emphasize that it is the image, right? It's the spiritual image, right? God created mankind's soul and their spirit in his image, right? The spirit is everything. The flesh means nothing is what it says in the New Testament. That's very key here. That's why they say the cult of the spirit versus the cult of the flesh, or the people of the spirit versus the cult of the flesh, what have you. Okay. So it performs false signs, right? It calls down fire from heaven, what have you. Now, when it calls down fire from heaven, you see that in Revelation 20, okay? This is something that's not impressive. It's like a scientist, inventing something and saying, well, God inspired him to do it. No, God allowed him to do it, okay? And if he doesn't do the right thing, he's digging his own grave, so to speak, right? So in Revelation 20, it's just like in Judges and Ezekiel, where people start attacking each other because they're in a state of confusion and they're attacking each other spiritually. For example, when criminals lead each other astray, okay, they're burning each other with the fire of God, right? Wickedness burns like a fire. So when the beast summons fire from the sky, what it's doing is it's being wicked. It's encouraging people to be wicked. So Revelation 20 is about people choosing to be wicked and encouraging each other to be wicked with their idolatry and denying what the true spirit of God is, right? The Royal African Falcon Martial Art Order, where we see the Lord is a warrior, the Lord is his name. Genesis 10, Ham begot Cush, Cush begot Nimrod, Nimrod was a mighty warrior for the Lord. Amos 9:7, are you not the same as the Cushites unto me, O children of Israel? And we look at the works and we see that they've rejected that idea, so they're being wicked. So the beast is causing them to reject that idea and to focus on the flesh, right? And say it's the Jews, where it says, beware those who say they're Jews, when really are the synagogue of Satan. We see in Galatians 3:28, it says, there's no Jew or Gentile, you're all one in Christ Jesus, right? Proverbs 17:2, a prudent servant will rule over a disgraceful son and will share the inheritance as one of the family. So they're getting them to look at things in terms of race and nation and flesh, instead of in terms of the idea of being a mighty martial warrior of God. Okay, the reason why kings wear a sword, David versus Goliath. They weren't at a science fair. They weren't doing a foot race. They weren't comparing Masonic, rankings. They weren't politicians, right? It was a warrior order, a martial order. Okay, so we see that it causes people to, start, accepting the mark of the beast, what have you. And that Revelation says everyone who accepts the mark of the beast will be tormented by burning sulfur in front of Christ, me, and the angels, etc., forever and ever, right? The smoke from their torment will rise forever and ever. Their eternal disgrace. Again, I will reign forever and ever. My martial art victory will reign forever and ever. This is the reality of this situation. What's happened here will never pass away, right? Heaven and earth will pass away, but my martial art victory will never pass away. The fact that people are going out like punks, tail tucked at the most important time in human history, will never pass away. That is the true nature of things, right? Before there was the flesh, right? There was things that were microscopic taking place that God put forth. So who's still around here in the flesh means nothing. Principle is everything. Principle is why there's flesh in the first place. So the people who are of the culture of the flesh, they have the order wrong for more than one reason. They don't even understand the flesh. They don't even truly understand the implications. The flesh wasn't always here, okay? That it comes from something else. It comes from the microscopic, which comes from the Spirit of God, that what God allowed to be formed. They don't even understand that. They're some kind of idiots, some kind of like retards. A lot of them are inbred. A lot of them are, act like sissies, act like dumb cheerleaders, act like dumb jocks. There's a lot of idiots out there from the opposition view. And someone with sense will look at this situation. They see me, the top martial artist ever, what I'm doing, what I'm saying. They'd see what they're doing, what they're saying, how they're all grouped together, acting like frat boys and idiots like that. And they would know immediately that I'm right and that there's some kind of punk.